Welcome to Ability of Love TV. With me is John Franklin, and we are going to have a discussion on the nature of spiritual experience. John Franklin, thank you for coming.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Great pleasure. I'm not a scholar, I'm not an academic. I'm just an ordinary human being, an ordinary man who's had fortunate enough to have some remarkable spiritual experiences, which completely puzzled me and baffled me. And I learned for the first time at the age of 48 that many other people were having very similar spiritual experiences that I had had as a boy and throughout my life. And I had no idea that other people were having these kind of experiences, and I was absolutely flabbergasted and tremendously attracted to it, excited by it.
Can I ask you to describe one spiritual experience, just to give an example? How do you see a spiritual experience?
Well, as I say, I've had many experiences of a spiritual nature, answer to prayer, meaningful coincidences which have changed the course of direction of my life. These experiences, as William James, in his variety of religious experiences produced at the end of the last century, beginning of the last century, found there's tremendous variety in spiritual experience. But the one perhaps that I'd like to relate is the one which affected me most profoundly was a mystical experience I had when I was a boy of 14. I was coming up for confirmation, but on that particular Sunday afternoon I was not thinking about confirmation. I was just gone out for a walk, and I was lying under a tree and just enjoying the sounds and the scents of summer. The sun was flickering through the leaves of the tree, and my mind just went blank, and at that time I was filled and surrounded by an incredible white light. And I felt the most incredible love, the most fantastic love that you could ever imagine, far greater than any love you could experience on earth, filling me, surrounding me, embracing me. And it was beyond description. I had a sense of presence, but didn't see anybody. Coming up afterwards, I was puzzled over it because, as I said, I was preparing for confirmation, but I didn't see Jesus, I didn't see any angels, I didn't see the Virgin Mary or the cross or anything to do with Christianity I was being taught. But the reality of that experience and the oneness, I found that I was one with during that period in this experience. I was one with everything. And all knowledge was mine, and anything which I didn't know, I knew immediately. And it was so real, so far more vividly real than me talking to you at this particular moment in time. It didn't last very long, and when I came back to my senses as a small boy lying under a tree, sort of, wow, what was that? Was that God? But God wouldn't come to me, a small boy, for goodness sakes. But what was it? And that knowledge, and then I realized I didn't know anything. I was still as ignorant a little small boy as I ever was. All that knowledge was lost, but except the memory of that knowledge, the memory of that reality, that greater reality. And that's profoundly affected me for all the rest of my life.
So do you have now an explanation how is this possible, or what really happened to you?
From the readings, from my understanding, we all do have a spiritual nature. This is just a fact of life. And it's times when the monkey brain gets stilled, or times of great despair, where you've come to the end of your tether and you don't know where to go or what to do, the other can come crashing in and can take you over and comfort you. Now, it's a marvellous account in the archives of the Religious Experience Research Unit. It's now known as the Alister Hardy Religious Experience Research Centre, and it's moved from Oxford now, and it's now at the University of Wales at Lampeter. There, the Hardy Archive contains over 6,000 accounts of such experiences, and many more experiences, as many people relate far more than one, so there are many experiences in the Alister Hardy Archive. One which was sent in by a criminal. He'd been born came from a criminal family, had innumerable uncles. His father, of course, had departed many years ago, and he took up to life of crime because his latest uncle was highly successful and was wearing gold rings and marvellous watches and all the rest of it. Anyway, he went into a life of crime and was in and out of Borstal, in and out of prison. And finally, at the age of 26, he was in prison for a crime which, in actual fact, he hadn't committed, but he was identified. That's him in an identity parade, and was not able to establish an alibi for that evening. And with his length of convictions, he was sent down for 6 years in Maidstone jail. And there he hit rock bottom. And he was not a religious man at all. But he suddenly found himself on his knees saying, "God, help me." And at that moment he was filled by light and by love and by a tremendous assurance that all would be well. And he said that for 10 days that feeling of assurance that all would be well lasted. He said, "I found myself loving the prisoners. I was even loving the bloody screws," he said. And that affected him. It didn't get him out of jail. He had to do the rest of his service. But at that time, and shortly after, he met a couple of prison visitors, Unitarians, who did practically help him. And he became, when he came out of jail, he became a Unitarian himself. And he's now a regular prison visitor, going back to assist prisoners and lead meditation classes. Totally altered man, a wonderful man, and a man who I'm privileged to call a friend.
So would you advocate the unity of all religions according to your experience? And
according to my experience and according to my readings of the mystics, which it seems to me that it's the insights of the mystics, whether they're the Christian mystics or Sufi mystics or Buddhist mystics, they all report a commonality, an ultimate sameness. And from my own experience of this, I would say that for myself, basically at the core of all religions, there is an ultimate reality, a one relationship between some divine, some greater other, and the human being, that we are part of it. The Hindus come to it very closely in the concept of the Atman and Brahman. The Atman being the soul, the spirit which resides within oneself, one's greatest self with a capital S, as compared with one's ordinary self. Myself as John Franklin, who's nothing, just an ordinary human being, but there's oneself, the greater self, which has got that divine element, which some hold comes from God, is from a God, is of God. And in a Hindu philosophy, the Atman is the Brahman, that thou art. There is this reality, there is a spiritual dimension to man. I'm absolutely convinced about that. And that this is in all of us, regardless of whether we're scientists or atheists or Gnostics, children, old age pensioners or what. And that is part of our heritage.
so what one must do to gain a spiritual experience?
I found that this is not something which can be sought. There are many techniques to try to gain it through Buddhists and Hindus and Christians, through meditation, contemplation, but not all people are cut out for meditation. People have tried it through drugs. Aldous Huxley tried it, the doors of perception. But you can go very, very far wrong in trying to force it, and all the churches, all the religions teach you do not try to obtain these experiences. They happen.
When you look at the worldwide situation at the moment, and the economic crisis and the wars, what is your view how we can make a better world?
The core of all the religions, the core of all humanity, is the basic principle of love, which is taught by all the religions and scoffed at by materialists and hard-nosed business people. But it is love which is the creative energy, and it's only through love and recognition of that we are going to have any hope at all in being able to be appreciative of our fellow brothers and sisters, and able to come together in the global community as we're becoming more and more a global village, and global problems are pressing upon us. We've got to come together, we've got to work together, we've got to pull together. And the spiritual experience which all peoples seem to have seems to be a wonderful way to start, at any rate, in trying to come together and to pull together in team, in love and compassion and harmony.
John, thank you very much.
Thank you.